Welcome back to the Lamp Doc. I'm your host, Mike Kelly, and today we're diving back into the world of lighting with the incredible Matt Ardine. In this episode, we'll explore his work on Wolves, his approach as a lighting designer on major productions, and his vision of the future for lighting technology. Let's pick it up where we left off. So this then transitions into Wolves because there are some parallels visually. And I think that that's impossible to not do when you're working with a lot of the same team.
It's funny you say that, like Everything Everywhere came out, and then the TV show Beef came out.
Right.
And Larkin did both of those. I didn't do Beef. I did the reshoots of episode 1, but I was busy during Beef. Netflix actually put out a tweet saying, just to let you guys know, it's the same cinematographer that did both movies. That's why they look so similar or something. Like there was a tweet about that.
We're now transitioning to Wolves, and you just made a point about it looking the same. I don't find them. I see some of the same threads that go through, and I think that that's a comment on humanity, that it's impossible to unlearn what you've learned from one project to the next. So you're going to carry those themes across the next projects. And I think that's what makes artists interesting, is that you're able to carry those threads through, but it advances and it develops. And so the darkness in Wolves, it's a much darker visually speaking film, but it's also a much darker thematic film. And so what
even during some of the goofy dialogue,
yeah,
it still looks like a drama.
On a film like Everything Everywhere All at Once, you had some grand visions and you had a beer budget. But when you get to Wolves, you've got champagne taste and champagne budget.
Yeah.
But you still want to pull those elements together. So I guess my question to you is, when you've got a budget that gives you a lot more freedom, it's easy to want to just play. But you've also got actors who are seasoned professionals and really good at what they do. How do you pull all those bits together where you're trying to pull from your past, but you've got a bigger palette?
Yeah, no matter what budget, the first step is recognizing what the cinematographer is going for. You know, what are we trying to achieve for each scene, and breaking down the movie sort of thematically and the look. You know, no matter what budget, that is something you have to understand from the beginning. And then the big difference between Everything Everywhere All at Once, a $14 million movie, and Wolves, which is potentially $100 million movie, is how much do I actually have to do myself, and how much do I just need to delegate to other people. So on EAO, it was very little delegation. It was like I'd tell my ACLT, like, hey, these tubes are going here, and Mike would like go get it done, but there was a lot of hands-on work from myself that I had to do. But then when you move over to these really big projects, there's no time for you to do anything hands-on because you're being pulled in 20 different directions. I had a full crew in LA and a full crew in New York, handling both at the same time. You know, and each crew has their own rigging gaffer, fixtures foreman. Luckily, thank God, I had one programmer that they let me bring to New York, David Kane, that did the whole movie with me.
Right.
So then when you're doing these bigger movies, it is about delegating and being extremely organized and making sure that your sub-department heads know exactly what you're going for and being clear.
But even in that, you've got rigging programmers in both cities that Dave's communicating with. You've got rigging gaffers that you're communicating with, and they're communicating inside of their world. And New York rigging gaffers and programmers have a different style. LA programmers and rigging gaffers have a different style. Everywhere we go, we've got different styles of working.
Yep.
And so as this person who's the focal point of all this communication, it's a really complex process
Yeah.
to sort of be that focal point. And like you said, as we get on bigger projects, your hands-on influence becomes smaller. And
Yeah.
it's
You're more of a manager, just, making sure the ship's going the right direction. Someone asked me, like, what was the most important decision you make when you're starting a project? I'm like, who I hire.
Right.
Because I depend on them so much that hiring good people makes your life so much easier. And so that's the case with this is hire good people. And why do you hire good people? Because they have good practices. They do the stuff, the way that they do things works well. So you don't want to go in and say like, this is exactly how I want to do things. Cause like, why did you hire them? If they were doing things well already, let them do the way things. But you also do need to make sure that stuff gets done the way that you will. So in the beginning of every project, I try to let them know like, here's what's important to me. Here's how I want things done. And then anything that's not mentioned in there, please do the way that you normally do, because I don't want to screw up your system. Right. And so for me, a lot of times working with people, I'm very much into being able to control stuff from the console properly. Every single light needs to be through the console. And then anywhere on the location, we should be able to plug a light into the network, any light into any place on the network and control it. So I have my ways of how I like the network to be set up, right, and the network equipment that we want to use, which is very unlike most gaffers. They're just like, oh yeah, that's the programmer's job. But it's not the programmer's job. No. Their job is to program and sit at the console and be there working with you and the DP. As a department head, not only are you in charge of lighting and power, which is what it's been the gaffer's responsibility for, a century. But now you're also in charge of the lighting control network. Yeah. And a lot of gaffers don't appreciate the part of that. And so the beginning of this movie, I put out like a 1-page sheet for both crews in LA and New York, be like, this is the network equipment I want to use, and this is how I expect the network to be set up. Right. Not going into details, but just giving that general thing of every light needs to be able to plug in anywhere and work instantly. Right. And I like Rat Pack products, so that's what we're mainly using for our data distribution. And then in New York, we have to jump streets a lot because we'd have a lot of locations that were 5 blocks long. And even though that condor is 5 blocks that way,
for example,
I still expect to be able to control that condor, no problem. So saying that we're going to be using wireless bridges. And so I sort of start with that overhead of how I want the network to set up and then let them deal with the details.
And are you getting down to which switches you're using? Are you down into that detail? Because it's important in your world, or in our worlds, that gets understood, mm-hmm, so that you're not using Rat Pack gear in LA and then jumping to Luminex switches in New York. Is mundane as that seems. Yeah. When the rubber hits the road on that night exterior, that detail matters.
Yeah, my saying is that the dumbest lighting technician should still be able to plug in the light and make it work. Right. You always have that day player that's like, well, this person's pretty new, or they're not firing on all cylinders. Like, we need to design the network for them to still be able to do their job properly. Right. And so for me, that's when we're using data distribution products, that it all be the same. If this guy goes to plug in a light over there or over there, it shouldn't be like 2 different brands of stuff, because someone on the first day for this day player needs to go up to him and be like, oh, to get Universe 5, you need to push this button and turn that dial. Right. And usually like one of the set lighting technicians that's been there the whole show will show the day players every day coming in like, hey, here's how we do things. That's how you plug in a light. You turn the universe,
It's idiot resistant, not idiot proof.
Yeah. So for me, I said, well, let's go with all Rat Pack. So Rat Pack data spheres on top of every distro in New York. And then our pull-out boxes were all Rat Pack PDB links. Right. And so it's the same method for anything. So anything first unit's going to be using is the same. And then I said, anything that's like rig lights that's staying there the whole time, like, I don't care what it is. For me, what's important is that every first unit crew member is using the same equipment, because that's when speed really matters. Right. When I call for a light, I want the light to be plugged in on the right universe and turned on like within a minute. And if we're using all these different brands of gear, it's just going to make it too difficult for everyone.
And does that translate into the fixture choices you're making as well?
In terms of usability, like, am I picking fixtures because they're easy to use? I'd say that is sometimes it, but on a feature film, a lot of times they'll have like a week to load the first unit truck. And in that week, they're going to label, address, and test everything. And so then when it comes to like the first unit package, and again, those are the lights that need to come off the truck, plug in, and work very quickly. I think usability doesn't matter too much because like it's already configured.
Well, not so much that, but are you picking brand names and running with their, and we don't need to plug anybody's brand
Yeah.
names, but are you picking a brand and then picking and trying to use their line because the functionality in that product becomes consistent?
Not really. I'd say we probably had over 20 brands of lights there because I don't know of one company that has a product line of everything that I need.
No.
Yeah.
And obviously my love, and part of the reason that we started RuPixels was because we didn't have a tool that did what we needed. So when you're picking an Astera tube, is it in 16 pixel mode all the time? And are you accommodating for that? Are you expecting that every tool that's able to be pixel controlled is set up to do that all the time, and whether you use it or not is up to you?
No, it's definitely a case-by-case scenario. And this is, I think, where a lot of gaffers step back and be like, wait, mode's on light? That's not my responsibility. That's the programmer's responsibility. But no, like the beginning of every movie, I do a Word document of every single light I'm going to use and what mode I want it in. And I'm doing that, one, because I want to be able to dial in the color the way that I want to. And the way I always want to is hue, saturation, intensity, color temperature.
Right.
That's the way that me and Larkin speak to each other, is like, oh, go to red. Oh, but actually do 50% saturation. And I know that like our base is 3200. So one, I'm picking the mode of the light because of that. And in terms of pixels, what you say is like, it's easy to say like every Astera tube do 16 pixels. But we had a set here that was 650 Titans. If I did 16 pixel mode on that, that would have probably add 5 days to the rig because of the amount of data distribution that needs. So it's easy for a gaffer to be like everything with the highest pixel count possible. But then I'm like wasting 5 days at 10 people a day. I'm wasting 50 man days on this thing that doesn't matter. Like we were replacing in the chase scene in Chinatown when he's going through the mall. That's a set with 650 Titans in it. And they were just replacing fluorescence.
Right.
Because one, we want to be able to dim the light instantly, which of course we can't do with the fluorescent. And two, Larkin's color palette for this was like 5 different colors that he wanted the various sections of the mall to be in. And a lot of times mixing those 5 different colors, which if we were trying to gel fluorescence, that would have never worked. So we replaced every single tube for that, for dimming control and to create the colors that we wanted. So in that case, I'm not doing effects, so why would I need it in 16 pixels?
Right.
Why add 50 man days onto the budget for something that's not even necessary? So for every single set and for the first unit package, I'm letting the rigging crew know this is the mode I want to use for the light. Because a lot of times they don't know like the purpose of why I'm using this light in this location. Whereas other sets, I'd be like, oh no, the tubes need to be in 16 pixel,
Right.
because I need to create a gradient. Like in the penthouse, I had color forces in the ceiling. And for that one, I need a full pixel mode because there might be some times where I only want this section of the light on and I need the rest of the light off.
Right.
So like that needs to be full pixel. But in the mall, I don't need full pixel. And it seems like an arbitrary thing, or like, why does it really matter to you as a gaffer? That's not your responsibility. But it is, because I'm in charge of the budget and how I allocate my budget.
Right.
And so by knowing these technical differences, I can allocate the budget and better in a way that it is seen on camera, and instead of just wasted equipment rentals or wasted man days.
It's amazing that we're getting into that minutia now. in our world that the amount of universes you're controlling now reflects in dollars.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a budgetary concern. How many universes, especially with an MA, where universes are more costly than they are in some other tools. So do you now go into, bringing another processor in because you want Dave to have control of that
Right.
directly through the MA?
And the number of physical cables too, because a lot of times a universe is another DMX cable that someone needs to run out.
Especially when you're talking about something like, the color forces,
Yeah.
when they're not running in wireless or even in ArtNet or Streaming ACN.
Yeah.
You're really forcing that down the old school cable.
Yep.
And so that's another dollar on another cable with another person that's
Yeah.
got to run that cable.
And that's knowledge that gaffers need to know now, which is something that they never had to think of before. Is, what are these what are the modes available in the light? And modes are just so important in the light. And I think that's what users have been saying the last 5 years to manufacturers. Like, these are the modes that we want. When the light comes out, everyone expects there to be these modes because everyone has their own preferences. And sometimes manufacturers ignore the users and don't put in modes in, and then we have to explain why we need these modes.
And I'm even trying to get now manufacturers to consider modes as the same across manufacturers, so that mode X is the same with every manufacturer.
Yeah, that could be difficult.
It's nutty.
Yeah.
But it really does mean that we're forcing people to reconsider what they're doing.
Yeah.
But even trying to convince manufacturers to have similarities across their modes, that intensity is always the first channel, and these little things. But that's where we're going now. This has gotten to be such a massive idea.
Yeah. What turned into just geek speak is now general knowledge that you need to know.
Yeah. And so as gaffers, we not only need to be good at lighting and good at human management, but we also now need to understand complex data systems in ways that even a few years ago we didn't ever expect to be able to comprehend.
Yep.
It's really amazing that our job has gotten this complicated in a really great way.
Yeah. And it's funny, sometimes people come to me like, oh, this is Matt, he's a programmer. I'm like, oh, no, I'm not a programmer. I actually work as a gaffer. And they're like, well, then how do you know all this stuff? And I'm thinking in my head, like, because I have to know this stuff, I wouldn't be good at my job if I didn't know some of the finer details of this stuff.
One of the things that I appreciate about your skill set compared to a lot of other gaffers in the world is that you work a lot as a gaffer, but you also work as a lighting designer. And those two skill sets are fascinating to combine and sort of separate.
Yeah.
So a project like this one, let's talk a little bit about this, because this is a lighting designer job.
Yeah, this was a movie that Sia created. It's called Music. They didn't end up doing much with the distribution, but I am really proud of the movie. They brought me on as the lighting designer for I think there are 12 musical numbers in it. And it's one of those musicals where you go in the character's mind and then everything becomes elevated, including the lighting. So the lighting had to go to the music. So I designed, I think, 6 of the dance numbers for this. And that's what I get brought on for a lot, where there's lighting that needs to go to the music, and it's sort of like heightened lighting.
Right.
So I got brought on to a number of movies, commercials, television shows, where I'm brought on as a specialty role as a lighting designer for those scenes.
And you're working within a smaller portion of a bigger project.
Yep.
And so you've got to now coordinate with DPs and other gaffers
Yep.
who are already immersed in this project, and you're being brought in for these specialty portions. So how does that work for you? Obviously, you're a pretty easygoing person, and your style is really fluid with a lot of other people's. But from your point of view, you're brought in to jump into this small moment in a bigger project? How do you filter in there, and what is your responsibility there?
I first approach the movie as this, I'm doing the whole thing. So I read the whole script. So many times when I do these projects, the producer will be like, oh, here are your pages. Be like, well, I can't just understand what we're filming. I need to understand how the scene works within the whole movie. So I'll read the whole script a few times and then read the scenes that they're bringing me in to do. So like with any scene that you're shooting, what is the purpose of this scene? So that's what I first try to understand. And then my first day usually involves tech scouting with them.
Right.
And on the tech scout for that location, it's meeting the production designer, the DP, and sometimes the director. And what ideas do they have for this? Because it's not my movie. I'm being brought in to as like a technical and creative person that has a little more experience in this part of doing music to lighting to music. I want to listen to them of what they want the movie to be, because they've probably been on this movie for 3 months prepping it, and they know what this scene wants to be. And I'm taking what they're saying and expanding on that to make it actually happen. So I talk with the DP, production designer, and then from there, it's like, all right, which art director is doing this set?
Right.
And I'm just like working with the art director for a month. And then I'll draft everything in Vectorworks, do a little previs, and give it to the production designer in the DP. Because in being a lighting designer, you're not just doing the lighting that lights the actors, you're very much doing the lighting that makes the set look the way it is.
Right.
More so with lighting design than when I'm just gaffer on a movie, because I'm like just lighting the set on the movie. But when I'm doing these, like they're giving me a blank canvas, and it's the light that is creating the set with a lot of these.
But you also touched on another important fact that on some of these projects, there's a production designer, but then there's multiple art directors.
Yeah.
And those multiple art directors are doing smaller pieces within that show, whether it's even a feature film or a television show. A lot of times there's multiple art directors that are handling these smaller chunks, and
you need to find which art director is doing which set.
Yeah, and which art director has the ear of the production designer in a way that helps you the most.
Yeah.
So that's a really interesting little tidbit that people aren't really talking about, is that there's 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 different art directors on the same project, and they all have influence.
Yeah, and it was great. I did Daisy Jones and the Six. In that case, the production designer was smart. It was one art director that did all the concert scenes, so it was easy for me. I just had to deal with that one art director, and it's always very back and forth with us of what information did you get? Here's the information I have. And a lot of times sending our drafting files back and forth. So as I update the lighting, they can update the set. And we're just transferring files back and forth in the design phase. Yes. And then this summer I did Freaky Friday 2, where I was brought on to do the concert scenes with that. And same thing, one art director doing all the concert scenes for that.
Nice.
And they're always like my best friend in prep getting these sets done.
Exactly. And so that sort of segues into another moment here, that not only are you working as a lighting designer, but you're also drawing some of these things. You're working with Vectorworks, and you're also working with some of the media server moments. What's your favorite media server?
For the type of stuff that I do, generally, we use PRG Mbox.
Okay.
Because it is 100% meant to be programmed from the lighting console. And the lighting console is like the base of all of our information for the scene. Whereas some of the other types of media servers, someone needs to go over to the other computer and program on the timeline for that. Whereas Mbox, it's you go on the other computer, you set it up, but then you program everything from the lighting console. Okay. So we can be making a lighting queue that also has media servers looks built into it at the same time. Because for me, it's one big thing that's lighting the set. It's not like I'm treating video any different than I'm treating lighting. The video products are still lighting to me.
Right.
And we're using them together.
And you're tying that in with Vectorworks as well.
Yeah. I think anyone that works as a gaffer or lighting designer needs to know some drafting software. Yeah. Not because like I'm giving to the rigging crew the finalized plot that they're going to rig from, But the easiest way to generate my ideas, to explain to other people, because that's your main job as a gaffer. You're not setting up all the lights. You need to explain to people how you want the lights set up and where you want them.
Right.
The easiest way to do it is to draft it in Vectorworks and then hand it off to them, and that's your starting point there. And not only as a communication tool to the people that we work with, but drafting is also very important for me to work out problems that I need to figure out.
Right.
So especially drafting in 3D, I can see like, okay, I need the shadow to land over there. That means I got to place the light here. I could try to do the math and figure it out, or I can just put it in Vectorworks and move the light around in Vectorworks so I find the exact place that we need.
And you also discover challenges that
Yeah.
you've got in reality.
Yeah.
In that you can't go 30 feet in a 20-foot room.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you end up trying to compensate for a different fixture or another position.
Yeah. It's a lot easier to move a light in Vectorworks than it is in real life.
Yeah, it really is.
And I fix a lot of my problems with the lighting rig in Vectorworks before it's in person, because I discover all the stuff that I would have never discovered if I wasn't drafting it myself.
Well, and I see that with previs stuff that visual effects people are doing. You know, you find out the camera's below the floor.
Yeah.
You know, or the lighting is in a position where stunts needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so you work with these people in different professions, and now you're starting to really figure out what the solutions are to problems long before you ever get on set.
And my MO is usually I start the file, the Vectorworks file, and I'll put in the very basics of what I want. Sometimes I don't even draw, I'll just put notes with arrows. And then I'll hand it off to a drafts person, or sometimes I'll bring on the programmer like a month early, hand it off to them. And then they'll work with the file with the rigging gaffer to turn my sort of what could be chicken scratch on Vectorworks into more detailed plots that they can actually use to install the equipment with.
Right.
So I'm never creating the final plots that has like the DMX patch information on that. I'm just doing step one of this multi-step process that this Vectorworks file is going to go through.
So when you're doing previs work, are you starting with Vectorworks?
Yeah. So when I'm doing lighting design, a lot of times I need to deliver a video beforehand for each song to be like, hey, here's what I'm going for. And then I'll send that video to whoever needs to see it to approve. Because when you're doing a movie and this concert scene is halfway through the schedule of the movie, they're not going to have time to come talk with you about what they want to do for every single song. I need to just show them a video, and I put time code on the video and be like, hey, just give me some notes of changes.
Sure.
And so in that case, I'm using Previs software. So I'll take the Vectorworks file, and then Dave Kane and I, we've done tons of movies this way. We export from Vectorworks into the Previs software, and then we will be in a Previs studio programming all the songs, and then we'll record those videos from the Previs software and send them off to people.
Right.
And a lot of times in that Previs software, I realized like, oh my God, that whole 3 trusses of lights, we're only using that for one song. Like, I'm not going to put those lights there. I'm going to like figure out a better way to use my budget than these lights that are only used for like the chorus of this one song.
Right. So what's this from?
So that there is the movie, well, it's sort of a movie TV show. So the TV show Transparent, their last season, they decided to make a feature-length musical as their last episode. So I was brought in to do 3 of the dance numbers for them.
Mm-hmm.
So another situation where I was working with the director, DP, production designer, and the gaffer to how do we make this look like a musical, and in this case, really show this lead character's emotions through the use of the changes in the lighting to the music. And then they also brought me on, in the background is an LED wall. They're like, we want something back there. We don't know what. And so I came up with the idea of video projection and technically what that would mean. And we eventually settled on a giant LED wall. And I actually made or found and worked with art department for all the content on there.
Right.
So we did all the lighting and we did all the content going to the LED wall. And so this was actually like a month of prep for this one dance number, because we had to do previs for lighting, previs for LED wall, and then they would do a number of dance rehearsals on this set, and we'd be there for all the dance rehearsals. And I think this song that is on the screen here is like one of the things I'm most proud of. I love doing musicals, and I really love when you can use the lighting in a musical to show what the character is going through. Yeah, I could watch this one over and over. This one, I'm super happy with the work for this.
My wife was the supervisor on this show.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What was her name?
Anna Bird. Yeah.
This was several years ago.
Yeah, it was quite a few years ago.
Yeah.
So have you ever had a lighting designer come in on a show where you were the gaffer? Has that ever worked opposite for you?
No, because the DP knows that that's like a specialty of mine.
Right.
And I'm not looking forward to the day that Larkin does a movie where we have like a musical part of it, because then I'm trying to figure out like, what would I do? Like, I would want to do the musical part, but they're just like, wouldn't it be time? Because even though I have the experience and the knowledge to like design the musical part of a movie, there's no way that you could be gaffing the whole movie and doing this because of time.
Yeah.
Because like when I'm doing this was a month of previs and rehearsals while they were out shooting other sets.
Right.
So it's not even like I have more experience than the gaffer in creating this musical. It's like the gaffer has all these other responsibilities of lighting these 30 other sets that are before this one. And someone needs to be here rehearsing with the dance team and working with the art department on the content creation and all that.
It's just physically impossible.
Yeah. The one movie that I heard of where it actually worked out was the Michael Jackson movie that's coming out next year.
Right.
I think they realized that beforehand. And so they shot all the concert stuff in the beginning of the schedule. So they were able to do all that concert prep during pre-pro.
Right.
And then they went into concert scenes, and then they shot the rest of the movie.
I think Mike Ambrose is going to be on
nice.
at some point. So talk a little bit about that with him.
But a lot of times when these are in the middle of the schedule, there's just no way for one person to be able to do it all.
Which would you rather do? Would you rather be a gaffer or lighting designer if you had to choose?
I like what I'm doing now. I'm doing a little bit of both.
Okay.
You know, I do enjoy these lighting design projects because it does offer me a little more creativity. Every job is different as a gaffer, but sometimes you're just there to like implement exactly what the DP wants, which I'm totally fine with. And I still find the challenges in that exciting as a gaffer. But sometimes you have a DP that it knows exactly what they want. And so there's no room for creativity, which I'm not saying is a bad thing.
Right.
But me, when I left film school, it was like, I want to be a DP. And then I started working small jobs as a DP, and I didn't really like that role. But then when I started getting these roles as a lighting designer, I'm like, this is what I like. Like, I get the full creativity of the lighting, and I still get to deal with the technical aspects of the lighting and not have to deal with like the camera side of stuff.
Yeah.
So I really do like that role.
Yeah. But it feels like sometimes the lighting designer role is a two-dimensional piece. Whereas the lighting you're doing as a gaffer sometimes becomes a lot more three-dimensional because you're dealing with it in ways that are more intimate.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the lighting designer role is not that it's two-dimensional, but you don't necessarily get into that flow of the whole project.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an interesting opposition. And if you can do both of them, then that's awesome. That's the best thing.
Yeah, with the lighting design stuff, I'm really only brought in for the scenes that necessitate that.
Yeah. So, Matt, I just want to sort of wrap up this with a bit of a look to the future. You know, obviously this industry has changed a lot in the past 15 years in ways that when I told Al DeMeo that the light ribbon thing probably wasn't going to work out, it's changed in ways that we can't quite predict. Mm-hmm. And it's going to change in ways that we can't quite predict. I'm guessing that, you know, our job is not going to get easier. It's going to get more technical. But what do you want? What do you want to see in our world? I mean, you're already sort of at the cutting edge of what we're able to do with technology. Is there something that is missing? Is there something more that you want to see or less of things that you want to see?
Yeah, I think a problem for me, no matter what project I'm doing, is the budget. I need like this light to do this. I need this light to do this. So like the number of lights I need to carry on the truck is high. Whereas if I had lights that can do more things, then I don't need as many and I can work within the budget better. So I don't want to pick between like, oh, a light that can do every saturated color or a light that can do bright 5600. Ideally, there's one light that does both of those. And then it also does full dimming so that when we need to dim up from 0, there's not like this bump on. Like I'm hoping in the future that there's lights that are more like a Swiss Army knife of doing everything. And so I don't need to have 5 carts of lights on the truck to light a set because we need the options.
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view too, it's even trying to discover what all the new lights do. There's at the rate that people are developing stuff, it's hard to know even what the new features are.
Yeah, because the other problem is you don't know exactly what you're shooting ever.
No.
You don't know. Do I need the brightest light, or is it going to be like, oh, go blue, super saturated blue?
Yeah.
And a lot of cases that's 2 different lights.
Yeah.
But how am I supposed to guess in advance? You do your best, but
You do your best, yeah. And then as far as technology goes outside of the lighting end, I know that we're pushing more towards everything being network-based. But is there a future in that world that you're looking towards? Is there some?
I think just to make it easier.
Okay.
In terms of networking, I want any light to be able to plug in anywhere with the least experienced set lighting technician being able to do it.
Right.
So the networking used to be like, oh, there's this one experienced person on set that knows how to do that. But to me, every lighting technician I hire should be able to know where to plug in that light for data and how to make sure that it's operating properly on the console. So it's making networking gear that's easy to use.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and for me, it's a step above that. It's sort of the ending the restrictions on universes. As you know, we tend to push that a little bit, but I think things like universes need to go away and make it just about data flow. But we'll see where we go with that. Of course, want to thank Maccam for hosting these. It's an amazing setup they've got here, and Michael and Nicole and the whole family over here have been incredibly supportive of the industry for a long time, and I really appreciate them. And thank you for being here, and I can't wait to see what you're doing next. I'm excited. Your career is one of my favorites so far. Like I'm always interested to see what you're going to do next. So,
thanks.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was fun doing this, and it's great being interviewed by a gaffer.
And that's a wrap for this episode of The Lamp Dog. Matt Ardine's expertise reminds us that while the tools may change, the artistry remains timeless. Stay tuned for more stories from the industry's brightest minds. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep creating, and keep the lights on.